It was a warm moonlit night, and I lay in my bed, the gentle hum of the air conditioner the only sound to keep me company. At 51, my life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, one that I had grown accustomed to. The house was old, filled with creaks and groans that had become a familiar symphony to my ears, lulling me to sleep. I was a man of simple tastes, my room adorned with the barest of essentials, a testament to my no-nonsense approach to life. The door cracked open and a sliver of light from the hallway spilled into the darkened room. I felt the mattress dip slightly as the weight of an unexpected presence settled beside me. My heart skipped a beat, but before I could react, soft, tentative hands touched my bare chest, sending a jolt through my body. I knew immediately who it was, my 18-year-old nephew, Alex, who had come to stay with me for the summer. His eyes searched my face in the dimness, filled with a mix of curiosity and anxiety. "Uncle Joe," he whispered, his voice trembling with the weight of his words. "They kicked me out." My eyes snapped open, and I sat up with a start. The moon cast a soft glow across his tear-stained cheeks, and his eyes searched mine for a hint of understanding. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the tumult of emotions churning within me. He was visibly upset and revealed that he had been kicked out of his house. This was an unexpected event in my typically quiet life. Alex took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving mine. "They found out I'm in love with a boy from school. My parents said they couldn't handle it, that it's not right, that I'm not their son anymore." His voice broke and a tear slipped down his cheek, glistening in the moonlight. I felt a surge of anger and pity for the young man before me. In that moment, all the barriers I had put up around my own heart began to crumble. I had always known Alex was different, had always felt a kinship with him that went beyond the typical uncle-nephew bond. I reached over and gently wiped the tear from his face, feeling the warmth of his skin under my fingertips. "You are always welcome here, Alex," I assured him, my voice firm despite the sudden lump in my throat. "You are loved, and you are perfect just the way you are." Alex nodded, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He leaned into me and I wrapped my arms around him, holding him tight. His youthful warmth and the scent of his shampoo filled my senses, bringing a sudden rush of memories of my own past, of the fears and isolation I had felt when I too had realized my own sexuality. I had never talked to him about my experiences, never wanted to burden him with my own secrets, but in that moment, I knew it was time. As we sat there, the silence grew heavy with unspoken words. The air conditioner's hum seemed to fade into the background, leaving us in a bubble of shared pain and understanding. I felt his breathing slow, his body relaxing into mine as the tension of his revelation began to ease. I stroked his hair, feeling the soft strands slide through my fingers, and for a moment, the world outside our embrace ceased to exist. Eventually, the quiet was broken by Alex's soft voice. "I need to take a shower," he murmured, his voice muffled against my chest. I nodded and he pulled away, the cool air rushing in to fill the space he'd left behind. He stood up, his silhouette framed by the moonlit doorway, and I caught a glimpse of the despair in his eyes before he turned away. As Alex disappeared into the bathroom, I couldn't help but feel the weight of his words pressing down on me. The sound of the shower turning on echoed through the house, and I found myself listening, not to the water but to the quiet sobs that accompanied it. I felt torn between giving him the privacy he needed and rushing in to comfort him further. After Alex's disclosure, we shared a moment of silent understanding, and he expressed his need for a shower to compose himself. His pain was palpable as he retreated into the bathroom, leaving me feeling protective and torn between respecting his privacy and offering further comfort. I decided to give him space, but my eyes couldn't help but drift to the crack under the door. The steam from the shower began to fill the air, and with it, a faint outline of Alex's form. Through the foggy gap, I caught sight of his bare back, the muscles defined by the shadows cast by the moon's glow. His skin was pale, almost ethereal, and the droplets of water traced a pattern down his spine as they clung to his body. Alex's shoulders heaved with each muffled sob, and my chest tightened. I wanted nothing more than to go to him, to tell him that everything would be okay. But I knew that he needed this moment to himself, to process the rejection from his family. I forced myself to look away, respecting his privacy while my heart ached for his pain. As the minutes ticked by, the sobs grew quieter, replaced by the steady patter of water on tile. The steam began to thicken, the scent of his body wash mingling with the dampness in the air. It was a comforting scent, one that reminded me of the summers we'd spent together, playing in the backyard and laughing until our sides hurt. I granted Alex privacy despite my urge to comfort him, witnessing his distress from afar as he took a shower. The sight of his naked back and the sounds of his sobs stirred up feelings of protectiveness and pain within me, while his body wash brought back nostalgic memories of our shared past. The shower door was fogged over, obscuring Alex's form, but the outline of his body was etched into my mind from that brief glimpse. His beauty was not something I had allowed myself to notice before, not in this way. He was my nephew, a young man I had raised as my own, and the thought of seeing him as anything more had always been a line I dared not cross. But in that moment, as I sat on the edge of my bed, I couldn't help but admire the graceful lines of his body, the way the water cascaded down his back, caressing the curves and valleys of his muscles. But I was old, and he was young, so I told myself to sleep, to forget the feelings that were bubbling up inside me. I knew that to act on them would only cause him pain and confusion. I had been down that road before, had seen the damage that could be wrought by an ill-timed declaration of love. I would be his rock, his confidant, his shelter in the storm, but nothing more. I had to be strong for him. With a heavy sigh, I lay back down and pulled the covers up to my chin, willing my racing heart to slow. I closed my eyes and focused on the rhythm of the shower, the sound of the water beating against the porcelain. I thought back to the nights I had lain awake in my own bed, feeling the same confusion and despair that now filled Alex's heart. The years had not dulled the ache of those memories, but they had taught me patience, resilience, and the art of hiding my true feelings. The water stopped, and the room grew quiet. The sound of Alex's footsteps approached, the soft pad of his bare feet on the carpet. My eyes remained shut, feigning sleep, but I felt his presence as he stood in the doorway, watching me. The air grew colder, and I knew he was no longer there. With a silent prayer for his strength, I rolled over, my back to the door. I listened as he moved across the hallway to the spare room, his footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. The door clicked shut, and the house was still again. In the quiet, my mind raced with thoughts of what tomorrow would bring. Would we talk about it? Would he want to stay with me? Or would the awkwardness between us drive him away? I had always been his rock, the one he could come to with any problem. But this was different. This was personal, a shared burden that could either draw us closer or push us apart. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm within me. The minutes stretched into an eternity before the sound of his door closing echoed down the hall. The house was once again bathed in silence, save for the distant hum of the refrigerator. I rolled onto my back, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun lazily above me, casting shifting shadows across the room. The weight of the situation settled on my chest, and for the first time in a long while, I felt truly alone. As sleep continued to elude me, I replayed the moment of Alex's touch in my mind. It had been so unexpected, so innocent, yet it stirred something deep within me that I hadn't felt in years. His hand had rested on my chest, and I could still feel the heat of his palm, the gentle pressure that seemed to resonate through my entire being. It was a reminder of a time when I too had been young and full of hope, before the world had taught me the bitter taste of rejection and solitude. And then there was the kiss. It had been a fleeting brush of his lips against my cheek, but it had left a mark that burned with a fierce intensity. In that brief, unguarded moment, the love I had kept buried for him had surfaced, and it was a love I had never dared to acknowledge, not even to myself. But now it was there, demanding my attention, refusing to be buried beneath the layers of duty and familial affection. The kiss had been chaste, almost accidental, as if Alex hadn't meant for it to happen. His eyes had been closed, lost in his own thoughts, and his body had leaned into me, seeking comfort. I lay there, frozen, feeling the warmth of his breath against my skin, the softness of his hair against my arm. I had wanted to pull away, to break the contact, but I was paralyzed, trapped by the sudden realization that the line I had drawn in the sand had been washed away by the tide of his pain. My mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. Alex was vulnerable, hurt, and looking for someone to understand him, to accept him. He had found that in me, and the thought filled me with a mix of pride and terror. I had been the one to comfort him, to tell him he was loved and perfect, but now the physical intimacy had changed everything. It was a complication I hadn't foreseen, one that I wasn't sure I was ready to navigate. The sound of Alex settling into the spare room was like a nail in the coffin of my restlessness. I knew that if I didn't confront my feelings, they would only grow stronger, threatening the foundation of our relationship. I needed to be clear-headed, to figure out what this meant for us moving forward. With a heavy heart, I swung my legs over the side of the bed and padded softly down the hall. I tapped gently on his door, the wood cool to the touch. "Alex?" I called, my voice barely a whisper. "Can I come in?" After a moment, the door cracked open, and Alex looked out at me, his eyes red and puffy from crying. He was wearing a t-shirt and boxers, his hair still damp from the shower. He stepped aside, allowing me to enter, and I sat on the edge of the bed he'd claimed as his own for the summer. The room was a stark contrast to mine, filled with the remnants of his teenage life, posters of rock bands, a pile of rumpled clothes, and the faint smell of his cologne. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the conversation to come. "Alex?" I began, my voice tentative. "I need to talk to you about what happened earlier." He looked at me, his eyes searching my face. "What do you mean?" "Your hand," I said, my voice low and measured. "And the kiss. It's okay if you don't remember, but it happened." Alex's eyes widened in shock, and he took a step back. I'm sorry, Uncle Joe," he stammered, his cheeks flushing with color. "I didn't mean to." I held up a hand to stop him. "It's okay," I said, my voice calm despite the tumult in my chest. "I know it wasn't intentional, but we need to talk about it." Alex sat down heavily on the bed, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I didn't know what to do," he murmured. "I just needed someone to tell me it would be all right." "I know," I said, my voice gentle. "But you have to understand what you're feeling right now is a mix of emotions. You're scared, confused, and hurt, and I'm here for you, but we need to keep our boundaries clear." Alex nodded slowly, his gaze still fixed on the floor. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I didn't mean to make it weird." "It's not weird, Alex," I said, my voice gentle. "You're just looking for comfort, and I'm here to give it to you." I reached out and placed my hand on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his skin through the fabric of his shirt. He flinched slightly but didn't pull away. Alex looked up at me, his eyes searching mine. "But what if I do want more?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What if I want you?" The words hung in the air, thick and heavy with meaning. The warmth from his shoulder seemed to spread through me, igniting a fire that had lain dormant for so long. I felt my hand tighten slightly on him, my thumb tracing a comforting circle. "Alex," I began, my voice hoarse, "you're just looking for someone to love you, to accept you. That's natural." He looked up at me with a desperate hope in his eyes, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to entertain the idea of giving in to the desires that had been growing within me. The line between comfort and passion blurred, and I could feel the pull of his youthful energy, the same pull that had once led me down a dangerous path. But I knew I had to be strong, for both of us. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "Alex, you know I care about you," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "But we can't let this go further than it already has. You're my nephew, and you're hurt and scared right now. You need support and understanding, not..." not complications. Alex's eyes searched mine, the hope fading to disappointment. He nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I know," he murmured. "It's just, I've never felt this way before, and I don't know who else to turn to." I took a deep breath, trying to ignore the ache in my chest. "You're not alone, Alex," I assured him, giving his shoulder a firm squeeze. "We'll figure this out together." The room was silent except for the distant hum of the air conditioner. Alex's eyes searched my face, looking for something, anything, that would give him a glimmer of hope. And for a moment, I considered crossing that line, telling him everything I felt. But I knew it wouldn't be right. Instead, I leaned in, my heart pounding in my chest, and placed a soft kiss on his forehead. It was a gesture of comfort, of familial love, but it was also a silent promise to be there for him, no matter what. Alex leaned into me, and for a brief, electrifying moment, I felt the warmth of his skin against mine. His arms wrapped around my waist, and I could feel his heart beating in sync with mine. The kiss lingered, and I felt a warmth spread through me that I hadn't felt in years. It was a dangerous feeling, one that threatened to consume me if I didn't pull away. And so, with a tremble in my voice, I whispered, "Good night, Alex. Sleep well." He nodded, his eyes not leaving mine as I stood up and stepped back. The room felt smaller, the air thick with unspoken words and unexplored feelings. I turned to leave, my hand lingering on the doorknob as I looked back at him one last time. "If you need anything, I'll be in my room." Alex's gaze followed me as I retreated to my own room, the door clicking shut behind me. I leaned against it for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest, trying to reconcile the love I felt for him with the responsibilities I had as his guardian. The line had blurred, and I didn't know how to fix it without causing him more pain. I took a deep breath and pushed away from the door, walking over to the window. The moon had moved across the sky, casting the room in a soft blue light that painted everything in a melancholic glow. I stared out at the quiet street, my thoughts racing. The air was still and hot, a stark contrast to the chilly air conditioning, and the scent of jasmine from the bushes outside wafted in, mixing with the lingering scent of Alex's body wash. The feel of his skin against mine was like a brand, searing through the fabric of my shirt and imprinting on my very soul. The warmth of his body, the scent of him, was something I hadn't allowed myself to want for so long. It was a craving that had been buried deep, a secret yearning that I had kept hidden even from myself. But now, with Alex's arms around me, the line between comfort and desire was blurring, and I found myself unable to resist. My hand slid from his shoulder to the back of his neck, pulling him closer, and before I could think better of it, my lips found his. The kiss was gentle, tentative, a question and an answer rolled into one. His eyes closed and his arms tightened around my waist, his body pressing into mine. The kiss grew deeper, more urgent, as we both gave into the emotions we had been trying so hard to ignore. Alex's mouth was warm and eager, his tongue tentatively exploring mine. I could taste the sweetness of mint from his toothpaste, and the scent of his damp hair was intoxicating. For a moment, the weight of our situation fell away, and we were just two people seeking solace in each other's embrace. His hands moved to my chest, his fingers tracing the contours of my body with a curiosity that sent a shiver down my spine. I felt his breath against my neck, his kisses growing more insistent. I knew I should stop, that this was wrong, but the feel of him in my arms was like a balm to my soul, soothing the pain of a lifetime of loneliness. The fabric of our clothes seemed to dissolve as we explored each other, the barriers we had built up over the years crumbling away like sandcastles before a relentless tide. Our kisses grew deeper, more passionate, and I felt the heat of his body against mine, his skin smooth and inviting. The sound of our breathing filled the room, a testament to the intensity of the moment. Alex's hand slid under my shirt, his fingertips dancing across my bare skin, sending shivers down my spine. I couldn't help but reciprocate, my own hands tracing the contours of his muscular back, feeling the warmth of his body beneath my palms. His skin was slick with moisture from the shower, and I found myself craving more of him, yearning to feel his warmth against every inch of my body. Our kiss grew more intense, our tongues dancing together in a silent conversation that spoke of love and longing. His touch was like a drug, intoxicating and addictive, leaving me craving more with each passing second. The world outside the room faded away, leaving only the sound of our ragged breathing and the feel of our bodies pressed together. But as our passion grew, a nagging voice in the back of my mind grew louder, whispering the word wrong, like a persistent echo. I pushed it away, telling myself that love knew no bounds, that this connection between us was real and pure. Yet, the voice persisted, reminding me of the taboo we were crossing. Alex was my nephew, and the love we shared was one that could never be spoken aloud. I broke away from the kiss, panting, my chest heaving with the effort of restraining myself. Alex's eyes searched mine, a mix of confusion and desire clouding his gaze. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice filled with a longing that mirrored my own. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Alex, we can't do this," I said, my voice shaking with the force of the emotions I was trying to suppress. "You're my nephew. This is wrong." Alex's eyes searched mine, the passion in them fading to confusion. "What do you mean?" he asked, his voice filled with a mix of hope and fear. "I thought you felt the same way." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Alex, I do care for you," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of my own realizations. "But we can't let this go any further. It's not right. You're my nephew and I'm your uncle. We have to respect those boundaries." Alex's eyes searched mine, the hope slowly draining from them. "But why?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Why is it wrong to love someone?" I closed my eyes for a moment, the question echoing through me like a painful reminder of my own struggles. When I opened them again, I saw the desperation in his gaze, the yearning that I knew all too well. "Because, Alex," I said, my voice firm despite the ache in my chest, "love doesn't always make things easy. Sometimes, it's the hardest thing in the world to do the right thing, especially when all you want is to hold on to the person you care about." Alex looked away, his hands dropping to his sides. "What if this is the only time I get to feel this way?" he murmured, his voice thick with unshed tears. "What if I never find anyone else who makes me feel like this?" The desperation in his words pierced my heart. "You will, Alex," I assured him, my voice gentle. "You're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. You will find someone who loves you for who you are without the complications we would bring." Alex nodded, his eyes glistening in the moonlight. He took a step back, breaking our embrace, and I felt the chill of the air-conditioned room against my now exposed skin. "I guess you're right," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "It's just hard to imagine that." The room was silent except for the sound of our breathing, the tension palpable. I could see the struggle in his eyes, the internal battle between what he felt and what he knew was right. And in that moment, I saw a reflection of my own past, the painful choices I had made to hide who I was. But I knew that I couldn't let us go down that path. "Alex," I said, taking a step back and placing my hands on his shoulders, "you're my family, and I love you, but we can't do this." Alex's eyes searched mine, and for a brief, heartbreaking moment, I saw the love and hope reflected there. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the light in them dimmed, and he nodded, the fight draining from him. "Okay," he whispered, his voice cracking. "I understand." We stood there in the quiet, the weight of our conversation hanging heavily between us. I knew that the line we had crossed could never be uncrossed, that the innocence of our relationship had been forever changed. But I also knew that we could find a new normal, one built on love and respect for each other's boundaries. "Come on," I said gently, taking his hand in mine. "Let's get you some dry clothes and into bed." Alex nodded, allowing me to lead him to the dresser. I pulled out a clean set of clothes and handed them to him, my heart aching at the sight of his trembling hands. As he turned to head back to the bathroom, I caught a glimpse of the sadness etched into his features, a stark contrast to the passion of moments before. The house felt eerily quiet as we both retreated to our separate spaces, the unspoken tension lingering in the air like a specter. I sat on the edge of my bed, the warmth of his touch still present on my skin, and couldn't shake the feeling that this was a moment that would haunt us both. Would we ever find our way back to the simplicity of our old relationship? Days passed, and we both made an unspoken effort to tiptoe around the elephant in the room. Alex remained withdrawn, his usual vibrant spirit dimmed, and I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of loss. The occasional accidental touch or lingering glance only served to remind us of what could never be. Yet, we carried on, sharing meals and stories, trying to find a new normal in the wake of our confessions.